Ladies and gentlemen, George Cohn, Lest We Forget World War II Museum, Louisville, Texas. Good to see you all this evening. I'm going to talk about a gentleman that was very kind to me, that kind of got me going in so far as meeting German veterans. I'd like to talk about the paratrooper Georg Svitala. This is him after his jump on Crete. I studied my junior year of university in the University of Freiburg in the Black Forest in Germany. And one of my friends there, Marshall Essig, was from Pennsylvania. And he had a brother that had served in the American Army in Germany and had married a German girl. And the father of this German girl was a German paratrooper. And Marshall used to go on our little holidays, he'd always go to Nuremberg and visit the paratrooper. And he'd come back with stories about him. And so many years later, after we had left Germany, and I started wanting to interview German soldiers, I asked Marshall, is that German paratrooper still alive? And he said, yeah, and he gave me the address, and I wrote the guy a letter and asked him if he was at Salerno and told him my dad was at Salerno. And a couple weeks later, I got a very nice letter back with this photograph in it, Georg Svitala, 1941 is this picture here. So he invited me to the German paratrooper reunion in Braunschweig in 2001, I believe it was. And so I booked my ticket and I was all ready to go. And about a week before, his wife called me, Marga, and she told me, George, his name was Georg, George has had a stroke and he's not going anywhere. He's not going to that reunion. And I said, oh, well, my deepest sympathies. I'm so sorry. Please convey my sympathies and how I'm sorry that, I'll cancel my plane ticket. And she said, no, you come on. His friends said, the guys that are paratroopers and with him in the Nuremberg Paratrooper Association, she said, they said, if you're friends of George, you come on, they'll take you. And so she said, meet him at the Hauptbahnhof, Gleis 7, 6 Uhr morgens. Meet him at 6 o'clock in the morning at platform 7 in the Nuremberg main train station. They'll have on blue jackets. And so I was there at the train station. There were these group of old men, and I started talking to them. And lo and behold, these are Georg Svitala's friends from Nuremberg. And I got in the train with them and had a marvelous conversation with these guys. I introduced myself, George Cohn from Texas. And one guy goes, Wilhelm Gestenberger. He goes, I've been to Texas. I go, really? What were you doing in Texas? Were you on business or studying relatives? What was going on? He goes, I was a prisoner of war. Oh, well, I hope you had a pleasant stay. We went to the reunion. There were some strange things that happened. It was a great time. And I went and stayed at George's house several times, visiting him, and I'd end up spending the night. And I remember my second brother, Robert, was visiting me in Germany with his son. And we drove through Nuremberg. And I remember I told my brother, we're going to visit a German paratrooper that fought Dad, Robert. And he's going, no, man, I don't want to I don't want to see anybody that shot at Dad. I said, Robert, come on. And so when we exit the highway, when we're on the off-ramp, there's Georg. He's parked his car somewhere, and he's standing in the grass next to the exit, peering, looking for us to guide us in. He's, being true to true. Treue Treue, as the paratroopers say. He's going to, I'm the son of his enemy, but he's invited me as a guest, and he's making sure I get off the Autobahn at the right exit, and he waves us in, and we follow him to his house. And I remember my brother and my nephew and I sitting on his couch drinking tea or coffee and having cake with him and his wife. And my brother, you could tell my brother was just very uncomfortable with it. But by the time it was all over, everybody was laughing. We were having a good time. After he had that stroke, I tell you what, I went to visit him one time, and he was in a hospital bed in the front room where we used to sit and have tea. And it had one of those little triangle things, you know, that you can grab your hand, put your hand on and pull yourself up. And only one side worked with him because the stroke had gotten the other. And he'd reach in, he'd grab that triangle thing, and he'd pull himself up, and he'd look at me and he'd swear in the eyes, and he'd go, Emma, 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 Emma. Always, 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 always. That's all he could say was Emma, 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 Emma. I remember walking in, and he didn't know who I was, and I told him, George, it's George from Texas. You remember, da-da-da-da-da, you know, la-di-da. And when the light bulb went off in his head, I could see the smile in his eyes because he recognized who I was and that I'd come to visit him when he was at incapacitated state.